Okay, what happened is around Christmas time, 1774, the Boston Tea Party famously occurs. The Boston, we don't know who, but they dumped tea overboard that they didn't want to have landed because they were refusing to pay the excise tax on tea, the luxury tax on tea, and Britain reacted, and they had started behaving in such a punitive fashion that most younger men of prominence it was easy for them to move to the revolutionary cause. But Britain overreacted by closing Boston Harbor, effectively, some use the word strangle, but effectively condemning the merchant community in Boston to slow bankruptcy. And of course, everybody, the Virginia legislature, they're saying, well, how are we going to react to that as fellow colonists? We can't let that happen to Massachusetts, to Boston. It could happen to us. Virginia didn't have a big harbor, but you could see where they thought that they should make common cause. And so Thomas Jefferson, Francis Lightfoot Lee, Richard Henry Lee, and 2 or 3 others met after hours, and as Jefferson said, rummaged through the old statute and law books at the Capitol in Williamsburg, and found some precedents for forms of protest that they thought would not call down on themselves the fury of the British Empire, which is essentially what Boston had just done to itself. So they moved. They came to session the next day, and they proposed together that Virginia the legislature declare a day of fasting and prayer to demonstrate solidarity with the people of Boston in their time of plight. And it passed resoundingly. Lord Dunmore, over in the governor's palace, hears that this upstart thing has occurred, and he sends word over to the legislature, to the General Assembly, and this is his right. You all, I'm dissolving you all. Go home. Just go home. And what some of the Burgesses did that summer was they did go home. But what most of them did, and so Francis Lightfoot Lee is essentially part of a coalition that is a majority. He's with Thomas Jefferson. They're roughly actually he's 10 years older than TJ, but they're all young men in agreement that they are being abused by their father, the king, and his government. And so they decide to on their own, dissolve the House of Burgesses and create a new legislature, which they call the Virginia Convention. And that was really the beginning of the radicalization of men who had been, the Virginians, they were proud of they had been proud of their status as Englishmen. But they had, from starting with the early 1760s, when these young men were just in their late teens, early 20s, they'd been seeing one abuse after another on the part of the British Empire. So becoming a patriot, that is to say, becoming someone who found common cause with, what it first meant was finding common cause with the other individuals like themselves in the American colonies, and then grew through these ideological positions that they could introduce because of their educations about natural rights and the responsibility of a government to its people. They could start adding some ideological punch to their protest. So it's much more dramatic and stirring than to call it an evolution, but there was a movement of a group, and Francis Lightfoot Lee was part of that group.